Sheikh Ahmad Deedat, I greet you and welcome you on behalf of the audience. Now, I think it is the right of the audience that they know you, that they know the private personal facets of Ahmad Deedat, the life history of Ahmad Deedat in his youth, his beginnings, his life march, and how he reached what he has fulfilled.
I was born in India in 1918. My birth heralded peace, the end of the First World War. And as I grew up there, my father was already in South Africa. I hadn't seen my father because he had left the country when I was very small. And as I grew up, the conditions were we were living in a state of famine, starvation. So by the time I was 9, my father called me over to South Africa. And in 1927, at the age of 9, I landed in South Africa. And before my mother could be brought into the country to join the family, she died in India. So me and my father were the only companions, one to the other. I went to school, got my primary education, and because of poverty, I was forced to take on a job as soon as possible. So I started working in a country shop, some 25 miles outside the city of Durban. And across the valley from the shop was a Christian mission. And the missionaries, the trainee missionaries, were getting training in how to give battle to the Muslims, how to convert the Muslims. They were coming into the shop to do the usual shopping, buying sugar, salt, rice, flour, things like that. But when they came, they also practiced on me and the other staff what they had learned. They would ask questions like this, putting it to me. He says, you know, your Prophet Muhammad, he had so many wives. I knew nothing about that. He says, you know, your Prophet Muhammad, he copied his Quran from the Jews and the Christians. I knew nothing about that. He said, your Prophet Muhammad, he forced people to accept Islam. That if you don't accept Islam, I'll chop off your head. And he converted the people. I knew nothing about that. The only thing I knew about Islam was that I was a Muslim and I read the Shahada. We call it the Kalima, the Shahada. And if I met you around that time, I would have asked you where you come from. So you come from UAE. Says, what are you? Suggesting to you, are you a Muslim or what? So you say, no, I'm a Muslim. So I said, read the Shahada. And if you could read the Shahada, if you said, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, you pass. To me, you are a Muslim. If you can't say that, you are not a Muslim. If you can utter that, you are a Muslim. What it meant, I didn't know. It was like a magic formula. If one can say it, he becomes a Muslim. If he can't say it, he's not a Muslim. That's all. That's my knowledge of Islam. I prayed the way my father prayed. I fasted the way he fasted. And I knew that we Muslims don't eat pig, we don't drink alcohol, we don't gamble, we don't dance, and things like that. That was my knowledge of Islam. But these people are making life miserable for me. And there was no way out. Either I leave the job and run away, or fight back. But one cannot fight back without knowledge. But Allah is Musabbibul Asbab. He is the creator of opportunities. He had created in me a hunger for reading. See, maybe because of that loneliness, me and my father, what could we talk? The only two. We go and eat in a hotel and come and sleep in an apartment, sharing the quarters with other people. What can we talk? Nothing. So somehow I had developed a hunger for reading. I just must read anything, everything. Go to the library, read all the magazines, read all the books. And at one time it was hard for me to find a book which I hadn't read. So I had to keep on going through them. So this I finished. This already I had read. This I had. It was hard for me to find a book in the library which I hadn't browsed through. So this was the hunger that I had, and this hunger of mine led me to find a book called Izharul Haq. And this book changed my life. I had a hunger for reading. And one Sunday, I am going into my boss's warehouse and rummaging through a pile of old newspapers, looking for something better than a newspaper to read, like a magazine. So I take some newspapers, put them one side, find a new magazine, put it on the other side for later reading, and so on. While I'm going through this process, I come across a worm-eaten book full of mildew.
A what?
Worm-eaten.
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 I
There's holes inside. You know?
I see.
The worms had eaten it.
Right.
You see? And when I pick it up, it's full of mildew. So I start to sneeze. But I'm attracted by the title. It read in Latin script, Izharul Haq. IZHARULHAK.
Which meant?
No, at that time I didn't know Izharul Haq. It sounds to me like Muslim, but it's written in Western letters. It's not written in Arabic script. So what is Izharul Haq? I'm repeating though, Izharul Haq. What is Izharul Haq? At the bottom in smaller types is written in English, the truth revealed. So I said, right, maybe Izharul Haq means the truth revealed. And I started opening the book and reading. This was by Sheikh Abdullah Sindhi. He was an Arab gentleman who had written this book in Arabic, which was later translated into English, into Gujarati, into Urdu, to help the people of India to meet the Christian challenge.
Sheikh Ahmad Deedat, at the beginning of your practical life, you were exposed, like many others in South Africa, to the missionary attacks. But unlike others, you took a way and a direction which was special and different. You faced, confronted, and dialogued with your utmost activity and zeal. Is there in your childhood, in your upbringings, what explains that?
I think the real beginning of this would have been in my genes, what was passed on to me through my father and my mother. My father was a very militant person. See, he was, a fighter. My father was a fighter. Always in the family, outside the family, and he was a fighter. And maybe I inherited something of that spirit. But I lacked something. And that was physical strength. Because I was starving. I inherited a big frame, my father and my mother. But because I was starving, I didn't have the strength to show my militancy, my aggressiveness. So I had to find a way out. With my friends, whenever we wrestled, I always found that my friends were stronger than me. And they always beat me. Same size, same everything, same age, but they beat me, and they beat me, and they beat me. So I said, I must find a way out. The way out was, I said, I must learn judo. Because the strength is not there, so I must acquire the art. So I learned judo. Now, I start with them. My friends say, come on, man, let's have a bout. Let's have a wrestling, So they're happy. They know they're always stronger than me. But because of the art I had learned, I was able to beat them. Get them in a grip, he says, give up. Get them in another grip, he says, give up. They can't understand how this guy is doing it, But now it was the skill that I used to make up for my physical weakness. Then intellectually, since I had no companionship, no brothers, no sisters, nobody with me, no family, except my father. He goes to work, leaves me alone, I go to school, I come back. The only time we meet is at the table, eating time, in a hotel, and there's no communication between father and son. What can we talk? So reading became my hobby, my pastime, my obsession. I just can't help. If I see anything written, I must read. It's like a sickness. It's like a sickness. So that sickness of mine, I didn't know at that time that Allah wanted me to read. That the first word of wahi, revelation, Allah gives our Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was Iqra, read. Now I knew nothing about that. But somehow, naturally, I had that tendency to read. And since I read and I read more than all the other, my fellow companions at school, I was always superior to them all because I had more vocabulary at my disposal. So naturally now, in talking, in arguing, in debating, I was tops among my friends because of my reading. I didn't know all that, but now naturally it led me to that. So now it carried on. If there's a debating society, I would join. I want to debate. Anything with friends, arguing, debating. And then until I was thrown into the lion's mouth, so to say, at this Christian mission place. And now the Christian missionary, they are challenging me. And now I get the weapon. Allah Bari Ta'ala supplied me with an armor, how to defend myself. This book I spoke about, Izharul Haq, was written by Sheikh Rahmatullah Hindi, an Arab, to arm the Indian Muslims against the Christian missionaries. When the British conquered India, they realized that at any time anybody will give them trouble, it will be the Muslims. Because power, rule, dominion was wrenched out of their hands. And a people who has one tasted power, you aspire for it once more. The Hindus of the time, the British believed they were like the docile as the cows that they were worshipping. There was no danger from that quarter. The only danger was the Muslim. So they felt that if they can convert the Muslims, if they can teach the Muslims to turn the other cheek, as Jesus has said, resist not evil. He who strikes you on the right cheek, give him the other. Teach the Muslims to turn the other cheek, and you can rule India for 1,000 years. So with that philosophy, they started pouring in the missionaries into India like frogs in the rainy season. And they started challenging Muslims to public debates. At first, the Muslims were reluctant for two reasons. One was the language. They didn't know English. Second was that these people had just conquered us, and if we spoke too militantly, we might be sent to the Andaman Islands, like Robben Island in South Africa.